Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Tech Done Different. I'm your host, Ted Harrington, and with me here today is my friend, my member of the tech community, my fellow author, Etienne de Bruin. He is the founder of 7 CTOs and the #1 best-selling author of CTO Excellence. Etienne, I'm so excited to have you on the show.
I love it, Ted. I loved it when my people was able to work this out with your people, got all the documents signed, the agreements made, and here I am. We're good to go.
Here we are. And as and as we
That
learned
was a
before
joke.
we started hitting record, you finally corrected my pronunciation of your name. So this was an important day for both of us.
Especially since we've known each other. I'm gonna say, is it been 10 years
I
already?
think
I
so.
mean, I
Yeah.
feel like right when 7 CTOs started was when I got introduced to you.
Yeah. I think you guys had just started maybe like a couple years before that. And but yeah, it's funny how time flies. I mean, certainly the pandemic distorts the sense of time, but it's been a minute.
Yes. Yes.
Well, I asked you to come on the show not only because I just enjoy chatting with you about anything, but because you have this book that I think is so perfectly catered to our audience. It's called CTO Excellence. What's the subtitle again? In 100 days?
In 100 days,
100 days.
becoming the leader your company deserves.
It's fire, dude. I remember when you were in the book writing process, and you were. I felt really honored that you were asking my input on things like the title and the cover design and stuff, and that was really cool for me personally to be involved in that way in your journey. And I remember when you came up with that title, and you're like, "Here's what I'm thinking." I think I might have thrown the phone down. I was like, "That is so good. That speaks to the audience, tells them what they're gonna get, how to get it. It's so compelling." So tell us about the book. Why'd you write this?
Well, I wanna just sit with that a little bit because on the book cover, you had an integral part in the emphasis because I for me it was going to be CTO excellence in 100 days, big bold fonts, and sort of keep it all simple. And you were amazing. I mean, you've had an impact on the cover because you were like, hey, CTO excellence as sort of the promise, and then the in 100 days as something that you can see but doesn't quite stand right up there with the promise. And
Mm-hmm.
so you were, I mean, I texted you countless times like, hey, what do you think of this, what do you think of that? So not only that, Ted, but I think you basically resurrected this project for me, and I'll tell you why. And you don't actually know this, I think, but
Okay, I'm listening.
I had been working on the manuscript for about a year and a half, and the Google Doc, and I should just start writing. And you kind of Google how to start writing a book, and you just sort of vomit your ideas out onto a page. And I kind of got bored with the project, and I kind of it's just like, you get sort of exhausted of your own insufferable ideas. And I kind of gave up on it. I did finish it, but then I tried to shop it around at these literary agents who just see your book as a product that,
Mm-hmm.
with dollars and cents. And I'll never forget putting it out there, I think into the 7 CTOs community, or I think I maybe tweeted it or something. And you just said, hey man, you should talk to my people over at Scribe and Houndstooth and Lion's Crest. And man, dude, what a game changer for me. So I
Love that.
I tell everybody I know at Scribe, I tell you, I tell other people, like, you really helped in a formidable way for me to get this project back on track. So I want to thank you for that. It was truly, truly cool. Your encouragement, your empathy for what I was going through, having just published your book. So I just want to tell your audience and tell you, thank you, man.
Oh,
You're
dude.
prima.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, you did the hard work. I literally like made a suggestion and maybe sent an email to introduce people, but you sat down and did it. So that's awesome. It's been really enjoyable watching your journey. And I guess the first question that I really have about this idea is like, what is CTO excellence? Like, how do we define that? How do you know it when you see it, and where are people coming up short?
Yeah, so I to answer the question, I'll just tell you what gave me the impetus to write it, and it was because I founded 7 CTOs. I became sort of Mr. CTO to a lot of people. So
Mm-hmm.
after a couple of years, I'm sure you know this, like, you get asked all these questions and you get referred people because they know you as a security guy. And for me, it was all things CTO. And what I noticed was I would be introduced to founders who need CTOs, and I would know CTOs who were looking for new opportunities, and I would match those people ostensibly by the need and by the skill and by the experience and about the trajectory of the companies. And it would always go really well for the first 3 to 6 months. And then I would watch the relationship tank.
Interesting.
And it happened enough times for me where I was thinking, man, there's something happening in those first few months that is really causing the relationship to sour. And in
Mm-hmm.
the job market, when you're done with the job, you quit. I mean, no one's forcing you to stay in a role.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I was seeing was either the CTO sort of losing interest and being let go, um, or really there being some real animosity after a few months, or maybe within the first year, and people parting ways. And it led me to some research and some of my own stories and all that to create CTO excellence. And the premise is there are a couple things that you should focus on in your first 3 months that could really set your relationship up to succeed and really bring the excellence to the company. And so I think the to get to your question, for me, the definition is somebody who is operating inside of excellence, is putting the company and its needs first, understands the C-suite, is empathic about the business and about the goals first, and then passionate about how technology can solve those issues second. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what we see a lot is CTOs, people who land in those roles, are technologists first, and the company is sort of at the behest of that person's expertise or wherever they are in life. And I see that mixing like oil and water. It doesn't really gel. And so then the company tries to form around the person, or the person isn't willing to adopt the culture or the trajectory of the company. And so that's what I'm looking for inside of an excellence. And so CTO refers to the role, of course, not the person. And excellence, of course, is a moniker for all companies. Excellence is an easy value that most companies have. And so I want to see excellence in that role. I want the person stepping into that role to really excel and push that role forward in a way that really creates relationship with people in the company.
Is this something that is, I guess, approached differently, whether that person stepping into the CTO role is being promoted from within versus an outside hire, or is it essentially the same challenge?
I think that's such a great question. I think that happens. I think it's different. I think if you are promoted within the company, you have some real challenges. You have the problem of the way people see you, and I don't think there's a clear delineation between, oh, you were the lead architect,
Hmm.
so the architecture, but now you're the CTO, which you're not the lead architect, but the company might still see you that way. And so you kind of have to
Hmm.
decouple or untangle yourself from existing constructs about your role or people's experience of you. So I think you have a better chance at establishing what the office of the CTO needs to be in a company when you're stepping into a new company. Now, what this book also addresses is not just the person taking on a new role in the company, but also CTOs who are experienced in their roles, but find that the role has gone stale a little bit and need to sort of revamp that role towards excellence. And so for me, this is a 100-day plan. It's definitely orthogonal to the stuff that you might think, oh, tech this, team this, topology that, CI/CD this, and all the technical stuff gets put aside, and we focus very much on your interpersonal relationships, how you're showing up, what you're promising, how you're promising it. All that stuff gets addressed. So there's a sort of a 100-day turnaround plan.
There's this funny scene in the show The Office. Have you watched this series, The Office? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
There are people who haven't.
I know.
And there's that scene, right, when Michael goes to the board meeting and everyone's like booing or whatever, and then he like takes over the mic and he's like, 45 points, 45 days, and we're back in business, baby. And so I'm kind of thinking like, what's your 100 points, 100 days? Like how do we do it in 100 days?
Yeah, the general consensus is that there's a 90-day plan, right? The 30, 60, 90-day plan.
Mm-hmm.
I went with 100 days because to me that's sort of 10 times 2 weeks. So that's just the way my brain works. It's a nice there's 10 chapters of 2 weeks each that you can just execute on each of those. As far as the symbolism, I talk about it, as a South African who moved to the United States, where the presidential elections are based on the people voting directly for the president. In South Africa, we have a parliamentary system where the ruling party basically appoints the leader. And in the States, I was really mesmerized by the process of popularity and how presidents were vying for people's vote. And the way they were doing that was what I noticed. I was actually interviewing for my first job in the United States, and my wife and I flew over to do a round of interviews with the company. And it was right around the time of the George Bush, Al Gore debacle. Mm-hmm. And but what I remember was there were one or two debates during our time there, and they were making these promises like, within my first 100 days, I will do so and so. And that always stuck with me as a really clear way to tell people, listen, this is my priority. These are my priorities when I take the office. And that's the vibe that I'm taking into this book, which is in the office of CTO, this is what my promise is for the first 100 days. Of course, I did some research on where the first 100 days comes from, and it was from FDR's days when the Great Depression was upon the US, and he turned the country around and put it on he introduced the New Deal, which was a 100-day plan where in those 100 days, they churned out more legislation, made more changes than I don't think the country hasn't ever seen that since then. I think he had 98 days of just every day there was a change, and he would just have this small group of advisors and people, and they would just go, and that's actually where brain trust comes from as well, by the way. The term brain trust was coined from FDR's small group of people that he appointed that navigated the country through the crisis, which was the stock market crash and the world economy basically tanking.
This idea of 100 days, first of all, that's such a interesting background that you just described, and hearing you talk about it, not just in these contexts of politics, but also in the context of your book, in the context of really anything. What's so fascinating to me about this, I don't know what the science, I'm sure there's science behind it, but is that it's like, it's long enough that you hear that time frame and you realize things can get done in, like, material change can happen in 100 days, but it's not so long that it feels impossible to comprehend. Like, when people set like a 5-year goal, I mean, I set long-term goals, but 5 years seems like so far away, but 100 days, I can conceptualize that. So I assume that's part of what you're thinking, right? It might make people feel that this is actionable, it's going to be material, and you're going to see it soon.
Yes, yes, and in the book I talk about journaling. I have a little CTO journal concept to really encourage you to think about the people that you're working with, what you're doing, and a lot of these things, there are books out there. The first 90 days. There's clearly there's the onboarding phase. There's the tour, the tour that you make to sort of get to know everything. Of course, all of that exists. I specifically address what I see as a challenge in technical people who are highly skilled, highly optimized for finding the needles in the haystacks, are rewarded for finding needles in haystacks, to whom now the whole world has shifted to it's about the haystack. And now you got to go into this arbitrary, ambiguous world of relationships and feelings to help inspire people to implement and do the company's vision, not only for new CTOs, but in new roles. And when I say new roles, I mean when you take on a new role at a company, or a CTO role at a new company, to really have this plan be something that you can take yourself through. And yes, 100 days to me feels, like I said, it's 10 times 2 weeks. So 2 weeks, 10 times, and my promise is that you can turn around or at least set yourself up to succeed at the company.
Love it. Do we think that both the challenge that you're addressing and the solution that is delivered by this concept, are these unique to the CTO role, or is this applicable if we remove the concept? Would these concepts be applicable to other roles as well?
That's such a good question, and one I've been asked before. There's two things that two ideas I want to insert here. I talk a little bit about slowing down, and in my mind, especially as a technical lead and as somebody who, if you're joining a technology company, my first point is you're either working for or against your future self. And what I mean by that is, if you come in and let's say there's 5 hot ticket issues that the company's like, we need a new CTO, the other one screwed up, you land the job, and there's these 5 issues that's on the table that you basically inherit as you walk in. And as this happens a lot, there's this particular issue, particular challenge, bottlenecks, scale, teams, funding, and if to me it's a race. It's a marathon, actually, I should say. So if you're gonna arrive and make several changes because you can clearly see what the problem is, it's something about technology people. Like I said, we are rewarded for speed and detail and specificity. And so if you come into the new role and you start solving problems too quickly, you might be acing it, but I think that's an extreme. I think in most cases, there's some oversight, there's some there's creating expectations that will eventually be missed. And so I think with a problem-solving person who is a technical person in the role of CTO, there is the temptation to want to do too much too quickly. And I am recommending in the 100 days, I speak about a quick win, which is, yes, go and deliver value quickly, but maybe keep that to a minimum, and be suspicious about your assumptions, about the relationships. Everything is not as it seems, and rather slow down and take it easy. And even when the solutions are super clear to you, it might not be the right time to introduce those. And that your value inherently does not lie in how many solutions you are implementing to the problem as quickly as possible. And even if the CEO is evangelizing that you do that, the value that you bring is as a human, to listen, to understand, to have empathy, to care. And those things don't always come naturally, I think, to technical leaders, if I can generalize. So that's why I think that's very specific to the CTO role. The second point I want to make to that is the problems that you end up solving are not the ones that you were initially hired for. And so the problems that you are hired to solve is not necessarily the ones that you're going to end up solving. So for instance, the CEO or the C-suite or in your hiring process may emphasize the technical milestones or challenges or constraints that the company is facing. But when you join the company, you're most likely going to see a completely different view of what's going on, and you may have to solve those problems first. So systemic issues, we like to talk about technical debt in the tech industry. Well, there's organizational debt, there's organizational projections of what they think a CTO does, and you may have to solve that problem first because they may have a complete misconception of what the CTO does. I mean, it's amazing how few people understand what the CTO actually does. You know, I think conceptually we all understand what the CFO does, the CMO, the CRO, CEO. These are general business functions that have survived the industrial age. Maybe the CXO is a new thing with customer experience and all that. But the CTO is something that most people think, oh, well, it's the tech person that just keeps everything running and going, but really it's a lot more than that, and people don't always understand it. So you may have to solve that problem first by meticulously listening and articulating what it is that you plan on doing, and not just rolling in and assuming that everyone understands that the solution that you brought is necessarily the right one. Or if you went and solved all 5 of those problems that I mentioned earlier, that you solved them in the right way, and that they were problems to be solved in the first place. So that's why I think the person in the role of CTO does have a particular challenge within those first 100 days.
One of the things that's really interesting that I heard in that answer was this concept of listening. And my experience is that most CTOs that I know are remarkably intelligent. And of course, such a generalization. There's some that are obviously not as smart, but compared to maybe other types of roles, I mean, they're just, the concentration of intelligence in the CTO role seems to be so very high. And these are people who are smart, and they're capable, and they're solution oriented. And I imagine that the problem you just described is a really difficult one as people enter that role. And it's like, you are smart, you're a problem solver, you're accomplished. I want you to do nothing but listen now for the first however long. People are like, what? No, I'm here to be excellent. What are you talking about? Exactly. So that's a really fascinating, like, soft skill that you just described.
Yes. I love that you picked up on that. You know, and I think a lot of this speaks to where you believe you bring value. And if you are in a groove that the value that I bring is to solve hard technical problems and be the smartest person in the room and be super duper intelligent, which I don't fault that person for that at all. But if that's what you believe the value is that you're bringing, then you're gonna see everything else as not valuable. And my point in the book is that's the most valuable. It's like the foundation that needs to be laid so that you can be the
Mm,
super intelligent being that you were put on this earth to be.
mm,
And so, if you wanna come in and break things because, hey, I trust me, I know what I'm doing. A lot of people are putting their livelihood, their futures, their own job functions in your hands, so to speak, by the technical decisions that you're making.
mm.
And for me, it's critical that you see those people as valuable, even the most annoying salesperson who keeps selling the stuff that you don't build. There is something to be excavated there and to learn from, well, how did that behavior get programmed? What is the underlying stress? What is the issue that that person is personally facing?
Hmm.
I would love a CTO to be truly excellent about being curious about what's going on, how it's going, and then to see themselves as being valuable by being outward focused on their fellow C-suite members.
I love it. Okay, so let's say someone follows this blueprint perfectly. Your dream reader goes and executes perfectly, flawlessly this 100-day plan. What happens starting on day 101? Are they now getting into the technical issues, or is it
No,
some other thing, or is this book number
no, dude.
two?
By the time, no, by the time they finish book one, I'm writing book 101 to 200. So I've got a whole Harry Potter series like thing coming out. It's the flywheel.
Yep.
No, that's funny. People ask me about that. No, I think the book ends. I end the 100 days by really focusing on the stakeholders. As a CTO, to focus on what is it that the stakeholders of this company want to see? What do they see as successful? Of course, I do talk about introducing your technology strategy somewhere in there. Don't worry, people. There is technology in the
Yeah.
first 100 days. There is the call to improvise. There's the call to understand that within the first 100 days, and this speaks to your earlier point, there's probably going to be one or two missed expectations already in the first 100 days. If you're doing what I'm asking you to do in the book, you're most likely not going to meet some of the initial preconceived ideas that people had for you when you joined. So, yes, there's going to be some missed expectations. So, I'm hoping that all of that lays the foundation for you to get to work. And so, for me, on day 101, you're really set up to start doing the really difficult things. Sometimes you're going to have to ask for budgets that the company didn't intend for you to have. There's a lot of times, and I think you've seen this as well. Someone comes to you because they want the proverbial penetration test, and you're like, oh,
Mm,
okay, there's another one of these.
yeah.
Let's talk about vulnerability scan, and let's educate them that their $10,000 point and click thing that they have is actually $100,000 audit that
Mhm.
really, is a fraction of the percentage of the risk that they face. There's all of that education that you have to do, which creates sort of the sense of, man, that's not really what I thought I was going to get when I started talking to tedharrington.com.
Mm,
But now if you can successfully coach and educate, and they can trust you, and you can bring, well, of course, now on day 101, you get to run those tests, work with the teams, educate the security teams, build that bridge between the security teams and the rest of the company that may have been broken down. So my hope is that when you've cemented your place inside of the company's DNA in that first 100 days, you will have a lot of relational equity. You would have bought yourself a lot of time,
mm.
wonderful trust to now start making sometimes those paradigm changing shifts inside of the organization.
Mhm. Phrase just popped in my head hearing you describe that, this idea of slow is fast. right? Because like I think a lot of people might come into this role and say like, why am I going to spend 100 days just trying to like build relationships? Like I'm here to solve things, and it's the fastest way to solve those things is to build those relationships. So over time, you'll have the allies and support that you need.
And Ted, I have a lot of stories in there, not only my own, but other people's stories about thinking that they know what the solution is when really it's a solution to a problem that no one's had.
Hmm.
It's so much gets revealed in the nuances of relationships, and so much is inherited from the history that you just were not around to be there and experience. So why ignore all that history and think that you're going to come into a system and make some changes? This is not how systems work.
Mm.
Systems don't want to change. So the system is actually designed to reject you because of corporate relationships and behaviors. It's systems theory says that any change to a system is going to be met with the same force to resist it
Mm.
and get back to stasis or get back to the status quo. So you're actually set up to fail.
Mm.
And so if you can come in and understand that my role is not to be a change agent and to run hard and run fast, my goal is to be successfully ingested by this new system.
Yeah.
Unless you don't want to be there for more than 100 days or 6 months. I mean, unless you want to go wham, bam, thank you, and go. But if you want to have a legacy and you really want to make a difference, those first 3 months is nothing compared to the impact you can have over the 5 or 10 years of your tenure. And
Mm.
so I think it's totally worth it.
Yeah, I love that. I'm hearing you describe, maybe you didn't use these words exactly, but the distinction between influence versus authority. And influence is what you're talking about, like building relationships so that you can build allies, build alliances, and be able to persuade people to support change. A lot of people probably enter a role like this thinking, oh, I have the authority now. I'll just tell people what to do. It makes me think of this is one of my favorite managerial stories ever. We we one time promoted this guy from an individual contributor to his first management role, and the very first question he asked, he's like, "All right, when do I get to fire people?" And we were like, I think you're missing the point here of what leadership truly is. So let's just take a minute before we start firing people. Um, not that
Yeah,
you're talking about firing people here, but it's like influence. Yeah,
well,
sorry.
I actually talk about that very thing, is people who think that they bring value by making changes and firing people.
Hmm.
I think one of my first 1-star Amazon reviews was someone took offense to how I talked about firing people. I
Hmm.
think it wasn't, but I was actually, he missed my point. My point was that exact thing you just said, which was um, you think that you bring value by making change, and I think that's the danger, right? It's not that you think someone should be fired. It's that you think that you should be thinking that, or that
Hmm.
you are valuable because you're doing that. That to me is where the sickness lies. A lot of people, it's like when you land a series B or C and suddenly you've got a $50 million budget, and you may not, it's not that you have the money, it's that you think you should be doing certain things with that money, even when
Hmm.
you aren't fully experienced or bought into it. And so I think uh, with that influence and authority statement, the I always see people who are truly influential, or they're so comfortable with that. There's a certain level of comfort. There's a certain level of blase, and I'm talking about the truly influential people, not
Hmm.
not the influencers necessarily who
Right.
who thrive on that. But the people who are truly influential, I get the sense that if they found out tomorrow that they're not influential anymore, they would just be like, cool, I'll just go do something else, or I'll
Hmm.
just start my next thing. Um, and I think the same thing goes, people with authority. and I talk about this as well, is the sense that people are uncomfortable with their authority, and so they do really dumb things, versus those who don't really even need authority to get things done. And so I want to see that inside of the role of CTO at a company.
I love it. Well, I hope you don't read those 1-star reviews. I stopped reading the low reviews a
Dude.
while ago because the low reviews are always, they have nothing to do with what is actually in the book because they completely miss. One of mine, I say like right, it's on the front cover, the back cover, it's in the intro, it's even in another chapter later. It's like, this is essentially it's not a technical deep dive. We won't do any code level analysis here. And one of my 1-star reviews says, this wasn't a technical deep dive. There was no code level analysis. 1 star. I'm like, thanks. I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt.
Yeah, it's an interesting relationship. I think, as a first time author, yeah, there's an interesting relationship with the 1-star people. I've had an interesting shift in my own persona, my own relationship, as someone who has built a community called 7 CTOs, and I've built communities before that. I sort of defined myself by the health of the community,
Hmm.
and really the desire to please people. If you want to build community, you kind of have to please people, that events that they like, the topics that they like, the other people that they like. I mean, you can't, I rarely see communities built around an asshole. I see it built around people that you like and people that you want to be around. And so I think for many years I lost myself in that. So I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to disagree. I was afraid to voice my opinion. I would have strong opinions in the shower, and I would yell at that, shower head for hours because I have opinions. But I was very cautious to voice my opinion, and I was actually quite afraid to. That was one of the reasons why this book project almost tanked. I was like, is it really worth it for me to put myself out there like this? And I think it's been interesting to see myself change and grow in this area of being willing to, and actually really enjoying disagreement as a way not only to debate the issues and the challenges, but also to learn from other people. And the worst 1-star review I have is someone was like, this is utter drivel. Get other people to like you and journal and that's it. And I was like, wow, bro, that's a serious conflation. But okay.
Yeah.
I guess if you want to be the dude that just does the IT stuff and doesn't need to be liked or need to have relationship with other people, then I guess this book is 100% not for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Etienne, I could talk to you about this all day. We are coming up on the end of our time here. So is there anything that you want to leave our audience with? Anything I didn't ask you about that I should have?
No, I think I want to just encourage people, if you're feeling the loneliness and the heaviness of the weight of responsibility, the mantle of leadership, want to just normalize that. If you're feeling lonely, if you're feeling misunderstood or unheard, or to just normalize that that's what 90% of people in your role is feeling. So I want to encourage you to call a friend, just connect with other people. And if you can't connect and you just feel completely stuck, just do something that you love that other people also like doing, but just go do that. If it's snowboarding or collecting stamps or building go-karts or retracing the steps of the 4 founding fathers, just go do that. Do those things, because you're going to find other people who like that as well. and you're going to find some kinship in that, and just get out of your head a little bit. But please know that you can connect with others who also feel lonely, and hopefully that will provide a breakthrough.
What a gift, man. What a gift to the community you're building, the all CTOs who could and should read this book. So you're doing good work.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate that.
For everyone who wants to learn more about what Etienne is up to or about the podcast itself, just go to tedharrington.com/podcast, and we'll catch you next time.